of you who helped out to make it happen. So we want to thank you very much for that. And we're going to have Marley share a little bit about what the trip was like for her. Oh, yes.
So my name's Marley, and I went on the missions trip this past summer to Halifax. So one of my favorite missions was a place called Brunswick Street Mission. We went there to prepare and serve breakfast for those who needed it. I also loved going downtown Halifax and doing things called love bombs, which was basically random acts of kindness. So I held up a sign that said, "You are loved." And I think these were my two favorite missions because I got to actually interact with the people I was there to help. So like, while I was holding up the sign, a lady passed and she started crying and saying that she was really thankful and that she really needed to see that. So what this trip has impacted me the most on is, like, obviously I realized that there are a lot of people that are in need, but it also showed me that there's a lot of people out there that are trying to help those people in need, and I got to be a part of that for a little while, and I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity.
Thank you so much for coming on up. You can go now. I got to give a bit of extra shout out for Cheryl. Cheryl, wave. Yeah. Cheryl has only been part of our church since about January, and she has jumped in with both feet. And she said, "I want to go on this trip." And so she came along. We call her Mama Bear. She took care of everyone on the trip. When my back went out on the trip because I was sleeping on the floor, she was there, like, taking care of me. I got a blood blister from walking around so much. She played nurse and took care of it. It was like grossest job ever. But she has the servant heart that said, I want to jump in. I want to serve however I can. And I just appreciate you so much, Cheryl. Whew. The first vehicle I ever bought on my own was a minivan. Now, you know you're a youth pastor when you're 23, single, and driving a minivan. But I wanted something I could haul around my youth group in. I had actually bought a previous van off of my parents, and I got into a car accident. Not my fault. It was a really icy day, and a vehicle slammed into the side and totaled it. So I had to buy a car for the first time. I know nothing about cars. All I knew was how much money I had from the insurance payout, and so I went and said, how can I buy a van for this amount of money? And it wasn't a lot of money. But I went to this one dealership, and they had a GM Transport. I don't know if you remember them. They look kind of like space shuttles without wings on them. They were like this wedge-shaped white plexiglass vehicle. And so I looked at this thing, and I knew I could fit lots of youth into it. And the guy was talking to me, and he said, "Oh, yeah, we've got, this is a really good vehicle. You know, oh, there's a warranty on the engine, and we've just replaced the brakes." And he went through all of these different parts and told me about how they were all in good condition or brand new, and this vehicle was going to last me forever. And I was like, okay, this sounds great. So I bought it. I named it Eduardo, and I drove to youth events all the time with this van loaded up with teenagers, and it kept breaking down. It was kind of terrifying. One time it broke down in the middle of an intersection, and I had all of my youth who were all in grade 9 at that point, and I had to get it out, but I was the only one who could drive, so I had to make the youth get out and push the van to safety while I was driving it. One time we were driving and I was going along and everything seemed okay. And then I looked over and I saw that my digital clock was like flickering and then disappeared. And then I looked over at the speedometer, and the speedometer was flickering and disappeared. And then the radio started and turned off. And I'm like, what is going on? And suddenly the power steering, so I managed to get it over to the side of the road. And I thought, okay, even I know what this is. This is the battery. We're going to fix the battery. So I got someone to come and with booster cables and give me a boost, and they charged up my battery. It did nothing. The car would not start. I had no clue what was going on. We had to call a tow truck. We got the tow truck to the garage, and they told me it was my alternator. Now, I didn't even know what an alternator was, but they said my alternator is broke. Now, this was almost 20 years ago, and that alternator cost me $400 at the time. And that was a lot of money to me. But when that alternator wasn't running, nothing else in my van was running. I didn't even know what an alternator was, but my van did not run without it. I got to learn what an alternator was because I went through 4 of the alternators in the 2 years I owned that van. It was a lemon. But when I went to the place, they never said, oh, look at this awesome alternator that we have in this vehicle. They talked about my engine, they talked about the wheels, they talked about the powertrain, they talked about all this stuff. No one ever talks about the alternator. But without the alternator, nothing would run. Our church is kind of like that car. You know, when you come to church, people tend to pay attention to who's on stage. Those of us who speak, you know, people will come to us and say, oh, good service. At least I hope they do. And that gets attention. The people who play instruments and stuff, people tend to notice that. But there are a lot of people who work behind the scenes. And I tell you that if they were not here doing things, nothing would function. They are just as important to what happens at this church as myself or Jamie or anyone else here are. In some ways, even more so. So for example, every Monday morning, there is a group of men who come and putter around and take care of the building. And this service is happening because they got up on scissor lifts and changed all of the light bulbs so you can actually see in here. They're the ones who fix things. You know, 2 weeks ago, our internet went down. And I will tell you, working in the office here, everything stopped. Like, you don't realize how much you use the internet until it's gone. And then it's like, I can't access anything. And we had a volunteer take time off of work and spend 2 days here getting our internet up and running. No one saw it, really, except those of us who were around during the week. The most of the congregation didn't even know it ever happened for the most part. But it made a huge impact on the life and ability of this church. Because every one of us has a gift, and every one of us is called to serve. And all of our gifts are required to make things happen. Let's look at our scripture passage from this week. It's from the book of Romans, chapter 12, verses 3 to 13. It says this: because of the grace that God gave me, I can say to each one of you, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought to think. Instead, be reasonable, since God has measured out a portion of faith to each one of you. We have many parts in one body, but the parts don't all have the same function. In the same way, though there are many of us, we are one body in Christ, and individually, we belong to each other. We have different gifts that are consistent with God's grace that has been given to us. If your gift is prophecy, then you should prophesy in proportion to your faith. If your gift is service, devote yourself to serving. If your gift is teaching, devote yourself to teaching. If your gift is encouragement, devote yourself to encouraging. The one giving should do it with no strings attached. The leader should lead with passion. The one showing mercy should be cheerful. Love should be shown without pretending. Hate evil, hold on to what is good. Love each other like members of your family. Be the best at showing honor to one another. Don't hesitate to be enthusiastic. Be on fire in the Spirit as you serve the Lord. Be happy in your hope. Stand your ground when you're in trouble, and devote yourselves to prayer. Contribute to the needs of God's people, and welcome strangers into your home. That was a huge list of different ways that people could serve. Now, when Paul first wrote this, there was battles going on where leaders in the church were all about like, I'm the best leader, you should follow me. And then someone else is like, no, I'm the best leader, come follow me. And then the followers were like, oh, I'm following this person and I'm following this person. And Paul comes along and says, wait, these leaders, they're not the point of things. All of us have gifts. All of us have a calling, and we're all following Jesus. So each of us should use the gifts we have. And you might think, my gift's not that big of a thing. But that little gift that you have, even if you don't think it's a special thing, it is an important part God has gifted with you. Some people have more practical gifts. They like to serve behind the scenes. For example, there is a team of people who every Sunday morning, they make coffee and tea and get everything set up. In fact, Marley, who was just sharing with us, her family is one of the ones who do that. Now understand, if there is not hot coffee and tea out here by the time that people start arriving for service, it is a bad thing. They might not get a lot of attention for it, but that simple act of service makes a huge difference on our service. I know I didn't have my tea before I did the morning service. I am feeling 100% better going into this service. There are people who serve in ways that no one will ever see. They're the ones that notice that a friend isn't here on Sunday and call them up and check on how they're doing. But to the person who gets called, that means the world. And maybe no one else even noticed that it happened. There are people that are serving behind the scenes. We have people who come in every week and make and stuff the bulletins. There's someone who comes in every Friday and makes sure that all of the seats in front of you has a pencil and a envelope and all of the things that we need. There's someone who tracks those little cards that get put in the offering. We have people who are in the back room probably right now, and they're the ones counting the offering that gets given. Some people, they give of their money and they support the church, and that's kept secret. No one knows who gives what to that. Whoever you are here today, you have a gift and you have a way to serve. And you don't need to serve like someone else serves. And this is the thing, we always do this comparison thing. We look at other people and we see them doing something and we go, I could never do that. That's not my gift. You don't have to have that gift. Maybe standing up front and talking will never be your thing. That is okay. But you do have a gift. I gotta call out and embarrass another person here. Daryl's sitting in the back over there. Daryl does all our graphic designs. I tell you, when I try and design a thing to put in the bulletin or a handout, it looks ugly. I have no visual arts abilities whatsoever. When I actually remember to get my things on him on time, and he does it, it looks amazing. Like every time you get one of those handouts letting us know about a new event that's going on, he designs those. That's a gift that God has given him. He uses it in his way to bless our congregation. All of you have a gift. Let's go to our next slide, please. So why do we serve? Well, the first thing is we each have a gift we are given, and we need to use it. In the Bible, there's a story. Jesus tells a parable of the talents. And 3 servants who come, and each is given a certain amount of money, and they are asked to invest it. And one was given 10 coins, and one was given 5, and one was only given 1. But each of them was given a talent and was expected to use and invest it wisely. So all of us have a gift. If you don't know what your gift is, we will work with you to find it out. Number 2, we accomplish so much more together than we do separately. I am always in awe of what this church accomplishes. When we set our minds to do something, a couple years ago, we decided that we wanted to make sure that kids that wouldn't get presents at Christmas had presents. And we thought, we'll do it for like 12, maybe 20 people. We had, 150 this year? And every year it grows. And suddenly people we don't even know are bringing stuff in because they're so excited seeing how our church is serving, they want to join in with it. The journey was just a dream 3 years ago. And now it's a ministry that others are looking at and saying, this is a model we want to learn from. We do so much when we're together. The carnival, this was my first year getting to go to the carnival because I was at weddings the first 2 years. And I walked in there and there was a tent with volunteers lined up and it seemed to go across the parking lot. And I was like, how does this happen? And it was a group of people who got together and said, we want to make this happen. And everyone joined in and said, I'll do it. I couldn't do a lot of things for the carnival. My gift at the carnival was I sat in the dunk tank. I got wet and cold for Jesus. There were people in tents praying for people. There were people flipping burgers. There were people, and all of these people came together, and this amazing thing happened. Because we accomplish so much more together than we do separately. Number 3, serving is an expression of gratitude. When we understand how much we have been given by God, we want to serve. When you realized how blessed you are and how many other people have helped you, the natural response that comes out of that is saying, how can I be part of giving back? But there's another piece to this. Serving others blesses others, but it blesses us too. I know in my own life, the most exciting times in my life is when I have been able to use my gifts in awesome ways. And every time I thought that I was going to do something to help someone else, I got as much out of it as I gave. The first missions trip I went on was to Mexico. I was between grade 10 and grade 11. And I went down and we helped build a church down there. Now let me tell you, construction, not one of my gifts. There are probably many, many other people who they could have hired to come in there who were a whole lot stronger than I was a whole lot better at digging than I was a whole lot better at putting bricks on things than I was. But I'm so thankful for that trip because even though I got to go down there and support that trip, I learned on that trip. I grew on that trip. I thought I was helping someone else. I think I was blessed far more than they were on the trip. I grew. I got excited. And finally, I'll say this. Serving together builds community. When people come to me and they said, I've been coming to this church and we're growing as a church, there's lots of people here, and sometimes it can be hard to connect with others. And people say, how do I get to know other people? I'm longing for some of that authentic community that you talked about last week. One of the first things I always tell them is serve. Because when we serve together, we grow closer together. We have a group of ladies who comes in on Tuesday morning and they knit prayer shawls. And they're serving. Some of them are knitting them right now as I'm standing here watching just to embarrass them. But when they come in Tuesdays and they're knitting their prayer shawls, they're also talking to each other and sharing together. They give prayer requests. They take care of each other. And every week I hear, because I sit in my office and they're loud. They're louder than the teenagers when they're up here. I can hear them in my office. When the youth pastor has to close his door, you know you're being loud. But and at the start of every meeting, they start going through together, and they're like, where's so-and-so this week? Where's so-and-so? And they're all concerned, and they're sharing their weeks with each other. They're going through life together. They're praying for each other. They're talking about who needed a prayer shawl and for what. Community happens when you serve. So when we choose to serve, we're blessing others, but we also get blessed, and it builds community amongst ourselves. Next slide, please. So maybe you're saying, okay, Brian, you've sold me. I want to serve, but I don't know where. I don't know how. What should I be doing? And I would say this. Number one, spend most of your time serving in ways that you enjoy and that bring you energy. Use those gifts. If you're an extrovert and you get energy from being around other people, then go serve on the welcoming team and welcome people as they come in. It makes a huge difference when you get welcomed into church. I got to point out Sherry again. Sherry is one of those people who sits at Alpha, and she's hiding in the back there. And every week when people come into Alpha, Sherry is there with this gigantic smile and so much excitement to see people. And I'm so glad that you're here today. And I watch people's faces light up as she says hi to them. But that's who she is, and she loves doing that, and she's doing. So if you asked her, does this feel like work? I don't think, I know we've talked, and you've said, no, I love doing it. Those are where you want to serve. If you really love, making food and taking care of people. We always, there's hospitality. We make meals for 100 people at Alpha every week. And we have people that come into the kitchen and get all of the food ready. And that's their thing where they love to serve. If you're artistic, you can use those arts to serve. If you're a behind the scenes person who doesn't like a lot of attention, but you like a task that, having a task that needs to be done and doing it, then there's always tasks that need to be. So the men who come in and fix the lights and do the stuff, they're those behind the scene people who keep things going here. And I was talking to Fred about this between the services. He leads up that team, and he says, I said when I retired, if I didn't like doing it, I'd stop doing it. But he enjoys being here and serving in that way. Sure, there are days when he doesn't, but on the whole. So spend most of your time serving in ways that you enjoy and that bring you energy. And if you have a skill or a passion and you don't see something that's happening in the church right now, then come talk to us about what your passion is. We will find a way to connect you to something that will use that. I have a couple people who have come to me recently and said, I want to serve, here's my gifting, and I realized that the program that we were running wasn't the best place to use them. So my brain is going, and I'm like, I'm on the lookout. Where can I use them? Because I want them to be able to shine and use the talents that they have. And maybe that won't be inside this church, and that's okay too. There's lots of places where we need to serve outside. We have so many partners that our church works with, and people are serving in ways there. But find what gives you energy and spends most of your time there. But number two, occasionally do something that stretches you. Sometimes there's an opportunity, and maybe it's a one-time thing, they need something, and you're like, I don't know if that's my thing, but sometimes stretching yourself and stepping out and doing it, you never know. Sometimes you find out that you like things that you never thought that you would by occasionally stretching yourself. On the missions trip, we spent one day with a L'Arche community, which is a really amazing community that seeks to bless and live out the love of Jesus to those with intellectual and physical disabilities. And when I heard we were doing this, I was terrified. I have a lot of talents. Working in that community has not been one of my talents. I had a summer job one year where we ran 11 weeks of camp, and one of them was a special needs camp. They actually pulled me out of the cabin on the third day of camp and said, Brian, this is not your gifting. Why don't you help out on this crew for the rest of the week? I was awful at it. It's funny. I work with teenagers, and other people are like terrified of that and are like, I can't deal with it. And I'm really good at that, but that was one community I really struggled to work with. But they came to me. When we were on this mission trip, I knew this was a thing coming up, and I was really intimidated about it. I didn't want to say anything about my fears about it, because the youth were, there, and I was trying to encourage them to step outside of their comfort zone. So we went and we did it. That day at L'Arche was my favorite of all of the activities that we did. Now, let me say, I didn't have to use any real gifts while I was there. Well, we did a barbecue. We were supposed to be cleaning out vans, and then it was pouring rain the whole time. So I ended up barbecuing. So I made sausages, basically, and barbecued sausages. And then we went inside, and the youth sat down with the members of this community, and we played games, and we did a sing-along time. It didn't require any gifts. We were just there and present with them, and we were blessed. It stretched me, and yet I learned that so much of my fear because of a previous failure was just my own hang-ups. I didn't actually have to be gifted to be able to be present. And they weren't judging me, I was judging myself. So every once in a while, stretching yourself is a good thing, because if I had another opportunity to go back there, I would jump at it now. Number 3, I'll say this: don't try and do everything. Sometimes people come into the church and they get really excited and they see all of the programs we have, and we have a lot of things going on, and they sign up for everything, and then they get really stressed and they get overburdened and they burn out. So I always tell them, pace yourself. Pick a couple things. I'd say find one primary place where you serve, and then maybe take one other, occasional, one or two occasional things as they come along. But don't try and do everything. Because when you do everything, it means that other people that maybe haven't found their space yet won't be encouraged to move into those positions. Test things out before you sign up for them long term. When someone wants to come and become a youth leader, I don't just say, okay, sign up here, you're in for 2 years. I say, come check out what's happening downstairs. See what we're doing. See if you like it. See, is this your thing? And if it is, then we'll encourage you to come. I have some people, I had one leader who's now helping us this year who came on our spring retreat. They weren't ready to sign up to be a full leader for the youth group. They came on the spring retreat and they said, I could do one weekend. So they came on the youth retreat with us, and they got hooked. They're like, our youth are so cool, I want to hang out with them all of the time. That's how I feel all of the time. And now they're back doing it every Wednesday, and it's awesome. But I've also had people come, and they hung out, and they checked it out, and they said, you know what, this is not my thing. This is not going to use my gifts. And I say, that is awesome. Let's help you find where you are going to use it. I want you to go there. The final thing is build rhythms of rest into your service. We have people that serve throughout the year, and then over the summer take a break, and that's good. We have people that do one ministry for a season, and then they move on to a different ministry. I had a couple leaders who had been helping with the youth even before I got here at the church, and had served faithfully for many years, and they were doing a great job, and I was so thankful for them. But they sensed that God was calling them to a different ministry, and that the energy and joy that they used to get just wasn't there anymore. And so I said, well, okay, I'll be honest. The first time they said it, I panicked. And I went, what are we going to do? We don't have enough youth leaders. What's going to happen here? But as I prayed about it, I realized that was the wrong attitude. And I went to them and I said, no, I want you to go and serve where you feel energized and ready and where you feel that God is calling you. And I release them. Makes it sound like I had them locked up down in the youth room. I swear I don't actually do that yet. But here's the thing. When I released them and let them go and serve, they found places where they could use their gifts better and were getting energy. And do you know what happened? New leaders came along. And those new leaders were really excited and full of energy. I now have more youth leaders this year. I have 8 leaders for my senior high and 7 for my junior high. Last year I had 5 and 2. So when one person said, it's time for me to rest, another person said, I'm ready to jump in. And people found out that they had energy and excitement in whole new ways that just charged me up so much. So building rhythms of rest into service is okay. It's good for you and it's good for the church. God created us to rest. He created us to have seasons of life where we put a lot in and sometimes we need to back off on that. God isn't angry when that happens. It's part of how he planned it. But that's why we need the whole community, because when one person rests, another person is getting energized and is ready to step up and do more. And when we do this together, things come together. Most exciting thing for me as a pastor is when I get to see other people, and the light goes on and they realize what their gift is. I've been calling out people who serve all through this service, because sometimes when people serve, we don't recognize it. And there are 1,000 more things I could call out of amazing things that I've seen where people have been serving. If you see someone in this church and they are serving other people, especially if it's a role that doesn't get a lot of attention, take time this week to say thank you to them. Tell them how awesome they are. I want to thank Marley again, because she got up here and shared today, and I'm probably embarrassing her right now, but that's kind of fun too. But I asked her if she was nervous to come up and speak. She said she was terrified. I never would have guessed it. She was stretching herself because I said someone needs to share, and she said yes. That's awesome. Nick came on the missions trip with us, and Nick was generally really quiet. He went on the missions trip. He came alive. This whole new person emerged, and he was like, I can't even say, he became a leader on our trip of enthusiastically doing things. When we were doing gardening, one day we had to rip down these thorny vines. It was an awful job, and he was in there full force, pulling on things. I think he got half a dozen thorns stuck in his hands, and he didn't care. He wanted to serve. It was amazing. And when I saw that, my heart just expanded. If you haven't found your place to serve yet, come talk to us as ministers. We'll do a spiritual gifts inventory. There are classes you can take to find out. We'll suggest a couple places you can try out. We would love to see you connected on things. If you see a gift in someone else, tell them you see that gift, because those words of appreciation mean so much. And sometimes people don't realize that they have the gifts that they had. I realized that I had the gift of teaching when I was in grade 11, the year after my Mexico missions trip. I went with a group called Child Evangelism Fellowship. We were doing VBSs in backyards of people's houses with little kids. I went on this trip, not really knowing if I wanted to, but I kind of felt like I was supposed to. I went on it. And I almost got sent home from training camp. There was this incident where all of the silverware for the dining hall ended up in the deep end of the swimming pool at midnight one night. And then there was an incident where I had a fight with my best friend and ran away from camp, and they actually called the police to come search for me. Yeah, I caused so many shenanigans on that 2 weeks of training camp. I remember the third thing, I caused a food fight in the cafeteria one day. And I remember Mr. Pinkerton pulling me into his trailer and looking at me. And this was me expecting to be told I was going home. Because I richly deserve, because I'm not even telling you the best things I pulled on that one. But he looked at me and he said, Brian, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this. I should send you home right now, but I'm not going to, because I've seen in you a gift at telling stories. And I've never seen it this well developed in a youth your age, and I believe God wants to use it. That was news to me. I had no idea that storytelling was something that God could use. It was just something I did. And he believed it. He called it out on me. I'm on this stage. This is my job now. I tell stories. And God uses that gift because he called it out. So if you see a gift in someone else, call it out. Tell other people, because sometimes they don't even know that they're good at the things that God has gifted them at. We all have gifts. We all are needed. And when any one of us isn't part of it, the whole body, the whole church suffers from it. We're like a car without an alternator. So find your gift and use it. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for your gracious gifts to us. Thank you for all you've done in our lives. Help us to see the gifts that you've given us, to use them for your glory in this world. In your loving name we pray. Amen.